Hi, I'm Chef Cynthia Louise and welcome to my YouTube channel because there's new recipes coming through every week. I'll do that again, yeah? The coconut yogurt is the best thing to replace dairy cream with if you're not into dairy cream. Today I'm making a date and rye loaf, and it's not often I use rye, and rye is a beautiful grain which is part of the wheat family, and when it's ground down from its whole form, we're getting all the bits like the husks and the inside of the husks and the starch and just everything, right? We're getting everything in that flour and it's quite delicious. And I'm a little bit annoyed with myself that I haven't used it in a long time because it really is quite earthy but also light. And putting this together made me happy the other day when I made it. My friend Phil came over and we had bits of this with a dollop of coconut yogurt and maple syrup, and we were just looking at each other going, this is really good. So it was a real moment. But the way you put it together is different to what you do with a normal loaf of bread. It's very, very different. I'm gonna use a knife to mix it, and I'm gonna very gently, and so are you, gonna mix it at home very gently because we don't wanna activate the gluten, which is the protein in the actual grain, to make it really solid. I want it as light as possible. And I'm going to use some lemon juice in my coconut milk, which creates an acid. So when I put the soda, the baking soda in there, it's going to bubble up and make it even lighter. So here we go. This is how we're going to do things. So this is the rye flour. And just have a look at it, how, like, it's not white. It's got all its bits. And that's what I love about this flour. It's very earthy. And very simply, everything is going to go in this bowl. And we're going to mix everything together, like I said, with a knife. I've got my baking powder and some almond meal. Now the almond meal sometimes has like lumps and chunks in it. So just make sure you get all those out when we're mixing this in a minute before we add the liquid. We've got coconut sugar. It's just a little pinch of salt. Now I really want to mix this up because you can see these chunks of almond meal. And I just want to get them and make sure I break it all down. So I've got my dates ready, and I've got two types of dates here. I've got dried dates. Now look at the colour of them. The only reason why I'm using two types is because I didn't have any of the majool ones. This is the majool one. Almost jewel-like compared to the dark ones. And then I'll show you this. So this is the difference. Hang on. This is dried dates, which I've just chopped up, and this is a majool date, which I've just opened up, taken out the seed, and just basically broken everything up. There's that seed. Into this. Now the dried ones don't have any seeds at all. Just put that aside. And next I've got my coconut milk. And I've got a tablespoon of freshly squeezed lemon. Just doing it like this so I don't catch any pips that go into my milk. And now I'm going to add the baking soda. And that's going to start to bubble up, which is what I want. Great. Going to aerate everything. I've got my coconut yogurt in there as well. Oh, that's really bubbling up now. Get all that out. Really does aerate it, the baking soda and the lemon juice. It's just activated. Okay, with my knife, I'm going to stir the flour and the dates. You can use any knife, I just have to have this one in front of me. And then the liquid is going to go into here. Now remember, we're not going to be kneading. It's so bubbly, that's awesome. We're not going to be kneading a lot because we don't want this to be a hard bread. We don't want the gluten to be activated so much. So just mixing. It's just incorporated, it's literally seconds. You notice how there's a little bit of flour down there? That's totally fine. This is what we're going to do. So I'm going to grab a tray and some baking paper. And I'm kind of thinking, like, you're probably thinking it should be kneaded more, but please don't, because it's going to go really tough. And that's why there's little bits of it, of flour down the bottom. Okay, I've got a little bit of flour aside. Cooking is such, it's all technique really, isn't it? Okay, let's dump this out on the board. Perfect. Just very gently gather it up. Push it together. Flatten it out a little. Good, don't stick on me. There we go. Right, straight onto here. And then with your knife, you're going to cut and just mark through. Well, not all the way down. Just making that mark. Nice triangles. Get rid of that flour that's on the board. Sprinkle it on. Make sure those cuts are very obvious. God, it feels like it's going to fall apart, but trust me, it's not. Make sure you've preheated your oven. I forgot to say that in the beginning, but I've preheated it on 200 Celsius. And it's hot. I can't wait for this. I'm going to put it on kind of up the top of my oven, because if I put it down below, it will burn the bottom of it. I don't want it to, because it's quite a hot oven. I'm going to cook it between 20 and 25 minutes. And the whole house is going to smell like rye bread, because rye has a really unique smell compared to spelt or kamut. It's really quite beautiful. It's very grounding. Okay, now I'm babbling on. I'm going to put it in. It's going to cook for 20 to 25 minutes, no longer than that. It is a high heat. I mean, 200 is a high heat. And when it comes out, I'm going to let it cool down a little. And when I mean a little, I want to be able to pick it up and touch it and open it up and put some coconut yogurt on it and maple syrup and all the things, right? But if it's too hot, it's going to crumble, and it's just coconut yogurt's going to melt, and it's just going to be like cream. It's going to be gross. So I'm trying to get that kind of like in between, cool down, but just a touch warm, just like a touch warm, if that makes any sense. Now this is not going to rise like a huge loaf of bread, you know, like bread rises like, because there's no leaven in there, there's no wheat in there. So it's not, sorry, no wheat, there's no yeast in there. It's got baking soda and baking powder. And it's just going to do its thing, so it's going to be quite dense, but hoping it's going to be light in between. Geez, I hope I don't stuff it up actually, because I've only made it once. Anywho, 20 minutes. The whole house is smelling really beautiful. It's really quite warming actually and grounding when you're baking, especially something like this. And that, like I said, the rye flour is quite exquisite. It's actually really quite airy, I can tell on the top, because it has risen a tiny bit. Oh, it's going to be lovely with a cup of tea. Now I'm going to let this completely cool down. I am not going to touch it. Do not touch it, Cynthia. And when it's completely cooled down, I'm going to smother it in maple syrup, maybe some jam and some coconut yogurt. It's going to be my cream. Yeah, great. This is cooked beautifully. Okay, leave it be. I love how rustic this is. It's cooled down completely. I'm just going to put it here. I'm glad that I had those triangles already pre-cut. Oh yeah, it's hard to cut that one. Okay, so I want to take, oh look at that in there, hello. And I want to slice it down the middle. Perfect. And then I want to put it on my little platter, because we're all going to have some with a coffee or in a tea. And then what you can do is you can have jam if you want jam. I know my girlfriend Michelle would love it with jam. And then you can have it with the coconut yogurt. It's kind of like cream, right? Yum. Or you can have just coconut yogurt on it, like this, with maple. It's up to you. I'm gonna try this one. Oh, that's really good. Yum. It's delicious. Rye flour is my new thing now. I will be storing this in a container outside, not in the fridge. I can't stop eating it. It's lovely. The coconut yogurt is the best thing to replace dairy cream with if you're not into dairy cream. It is so light and so tangy. And then with the maple on top, it is sublime. And even if you are into dairy, right? You can still have a play with this, you know? Just to see how you feel. Okay, I need to take a photo now.